What is the most difficult professional sport to go pro in? Now, when I say go pro in, I mean the highest level, whether that's a league, whether that's making the Olympics, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm not going to be talking about going pro in, semi-professional baseball or semi-professional, one of these fake NFL leagues. So I'm specifically talking about what sport is the most difficult to get to the highest level at. Now, a couple sports I'm going to roll out would be swimming, would be track, would be any of those kind of Olympic events where it's a solo event, where there's not any IQ involved. Those sports are not going to attract the highest level of competition. Number one, because they're not as fun. Now, I know to some degree that is a bit of my opinion, but it's not as fun for the viewers for sure because they don't bring in the money. And at the end of the day, if you are an elite level athlete, or if you're looking to make it out, that's your only career path as a professional sport, nobody is going into track, nobody's going into swimming. Unless you are literally the best in the world, you're not making much money. And especially with track is so applicable to other sports that make a lot of money, and that speed is so sought after that if you're a good track athlete in high school, you're playing a different sport. So I think both those sports are not attracting the highest level of athlete, and I think a lot of people, and track, depending on the race, but track doesn't have a we won't talk about track anymore, who cares. Okay, a few other sports that I'd like to discuss are going to be hockey, so the NHL. Hockey will be the next one up. So I do not think, a lot of people like to say hockey's super difficult, hockey's the most difficult sport, and I don't think it is. When people say hockey's the most difficult sport, they are saying, this is like soccer but on ice. And the pool of people that can skate is pretty small, and the amount of people that even have access to skating, that's another thing. Economically, it wouldn't really be economically because it's not expensive to skate, but a lot of places don't have access to skating. A lot of countries don't have ice rinks. So this is a sport that is going to be, we're cutting out, 80% of the global population that doesn't even have a legitimate chance to ice skate in their home country. So you're already pulling from a small pool of people. And once again, the money, although the money is better than sprinting or swimming, I don't think the money is that high for people to be really taking it serious if they're a great athlete. So I think once again, you're getting the lower tiered athletes. And I'm not saying the sport's easy. I don't think any sport is easy per se. Like obviously skating fast and breaking and shooting. Yeah, like I'm not saying that anybody could do it. This isn't a list of what sport is the easiest for anyone to learn the rules. I mean, anybody could walk with a football. Anybody could throw a basketball. That's not what this is about. This is about becoming a professional athlete. And next two we'll go to is going to be F1 and NASCAR. I would say F1 is a little more difficult, and it also pays a little bit more. But once again, I don't think either of these sports are going to be attracting the best athletes, for the reason that there aren't NASCAR teams, there aren't F1 teams in high school, there aren't really those teams in college either. So it's a very, very niche sport to where, the best F1 driver, the best NASCAR driver probably has never drove before, if that makes sense. Like they've never, with how many people have never got in an F1 car before, the best F1 driver is probably doesn't even know it. So that's why I think those sports are a little weird. Now that thing that kind of have never done it before, that's kind of similar to hockey as well. That wouldn't apply to sprinting because it's like if you're fast, you know it. So track and swimming are a little bit different in that sense. We'll go tennis and golf. We'll kind of lump those two together. I would say tennis and golf are probably slightly more difficult than NASCAR/F1. They do pay a good amount, so that needs to be factored in. The pay is pretty important because it's going to attract better athletes, and it's going to get more money into the program, so you're going to get more athletes competing. So it's kind of a snowball effect, I might say. Now with golf and tennis, one thing I do like about them is they don't have any height or muscularity requirements. You can be really any height within reason. You can be really any musculature. I mean, you can't be obese and you can't be anorexic, but if you're a normal person, you can legitimately make the professional league. So that is a step up because we're not eliminating anybody. But from an economical standpoint, golf more so, but even tennis, these are more upper middle class, upper class sports. There aren't a lot of golf courses in the projects. So we are eliminating quite, in third world countries, there's not a ton of golf courses there either. So for those reasons, I'm going to have other sports higher. Next, we're probably going to have the NBA, so basketball. I do think basketball is extremely skill dependent. I would say probably just as, if not more, skill dependent than golf. I mean, the skill that these guys have is insane. But, and there isn't really an economical issue with basketball the golf and tennis faces. You know, regardless of where you live in the United States or in like any country, there's going to be a basketball hoop probably within an hour of you. And if there's not, you can set one up pretty easily. So I think basketball is a pretty popular sport. The issue with basketball, though, is to make a professional league, the NBA, you need to be, I mean, there are guys under 6'2", but it's really 6'2" to 7 foot, and that's eliminating a lot of people. So for that reason, it's like you could make the argument based on that it's even harder to make it. But I'm saying for the normal person who's, let's say, 5'6" to 6'2", and they are sporty, you know, they're somewhat athletic, and they're willing to train hard, that person just can't make the league. So I don't really think factoring in is going to be a good way to tell. I'm saying for the average population. Next one, I'm going to go NFL and MLB. These two sports have somewhat of a height benefit, but not so much as the NBA. And they do have more of a muscularity requirement, which is something that everyone can probably get to within reason. You know, some of these positions these guys are massive, but I don't. You know, the NFL I'd probably say is slightly easier to make it to because it's more of just a North America sport. MLB, which I would say is the best baseball league, a little bit more global, so you're getting a little more competition in, and there's less IQ required to play baseball as well, which makes it more competitive. I would say the less requirements a sport has, you know, can everybody play the sport? Is there a height requirement? Is there a weight requirement? Is there an IQ requirement? Baseball, it's like, yeah, it's beneficial if you're jacked, but everybody's going to take roids once they get to the league anyways. So really anybody can play for the most part. So, and that makes it more difficult, and there's a lot of money involved in MLB. So we're legitimately we're picking from some of the best athletes in the world. Now, two sports that I probably should have touched on earlier because I am kind of, you know, dicey on where I would rank these. You know, the UFC, which is the best MMA sporting league, as well as just boxing in general, which has a bunch of leagues. It's tough because they have weight divisions of, you know, everybody, so really any male or female can fight, which does make it competitive. The issue is there's not a ton of money in it unless you get to the very top level, which means, are you really going to fight for chump change and do it as a part-time gig while you're getting beat up and getting injured? Probably not. And if you're that athletic, you're probably playing a different sport. So I'd probably, I don't know, but there really is no muscularity requirement. There is no height requirement. There is no, I mean, you really can throw anybody out there, and if they're willing to stick to it, they can probably be okay. So I'm torn on fighting in general. Now, what I would say is probably the most difficult sport to go pro at the highest level in would be soccer or football for your European viewers. Look, I think soccer brings it all in. It's the highest paid sport, which for that reason alone makes it one of the most competitive. Number two, it's in every country. Number three, a soccer ball is a couple bucks. So you can kick around a soccer ball with your buddies and get pretty good before you even see a goal. And also, there's not a size requirement. So you don't need to be jacked. You don't need to be tall. You don't need to be short. You don't really need to have any special requirements to do that. So I would say globally, the best and most skilled athletes and the most determined athletes are probably playing soccer. That would be my go-to pick.